Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a whole stack of sources, reviews, critiques, you name it, to give you the fast track on the contemporary romance novel Icebreaker by Hannah Grace.
Yeah, we're definitely lacing up our skates for this one. This book's been huge, a massive hit globally. And our mission today is pretty simple. Cut through the noise. We want to understand, quickly and clearly, what's the formula here, what's pulling in millions of readers, and where are the weaknesses that maybe keep it from getting universal critical praise.
It's a really fascinating case study, actually, in new adult success. So, for anyone not totally immersed in this subgenre, Icebreaker is, well, pure contemporary sports romance. The setup itself is super effective. You've got Anastasia Allen. She's this competitive figure skater aiming for the Olympics.
Right. High stakes.
Exactly. And then there's Nate Hawkins, the captain of the university hockey team. Very charismatic. And the conflict. It kicks off with a classic mix of tropes. There's an injury. It forces the hockey team and the figure skaters to share the only rink on campus.
The classic forced proximity. Precisely. That sparks the initial tension. And they supposedly hate each other, or
Yeah,
think
they
they
do.
do, which then slides very neatly into that extremely popular enemies to lovers thing.
Okay, let's dive into that straight away. Because the sales numbers are just huge, it suggests the author really nailed something fundamental. What were the main things drawing readers in right from the start?
Well, the sources are pretty much unanimous on this. The initial hook is all about really strong romantic tension
Hmm.
and that character chemistry. It's not just that they argue. It's the dynamic between Anastasia, who's very disciplined, very driven, maybe a little bit uptight, and Nate, who's more laid back, protective, charming. That contrast creates real sparks.
Okay.
Readers loved the witty banter, the sort of high-stakes flirting that comes out of those clashing personalities.
So that friction is kind of the engine driving things forward, but we can't ignore the fuel, can we? How central is the explicit content, the steam, as they call it?
Oh, it's absolutely central, yeah.
Was it well integrated or just
Yeah.
there?
A key draw for Icebreaker is definitely the frequency and the intensity of the intimate scenes. This isn't one of those slow burn romances where you wait forever for a brief payoff. No, this delivers high volume, vividly described scenes pretty much as soon as the characters connect. Reviewers who, rate books on spiciness, they often give Icebreaker really high marks for that commitment.
Mm.
It really doesn't shy away from giving readers what they expect in terms of significant heat. So it becomes a reliable pick for that spicy romance crowd.
Got it. So we're talking about a story that really prioritizes delivering on those promised tropes, the conflict, the heat, the specific college sports vibe maybe over, say, super polished writing.
Right.
It often gets called a guilty pleasure, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that guilty pleasure label is
Yeah.
really key here. The sources consistently highlight the book's entertainment value. It's superb in that regard. The romance car moves fast, it's easy to get into, and it delivers that reliable emotional payoff romance readers are looking for. It succeeds precisely because it offers a fun, escapist experience, a pure romance experience, rather than trying to be some deep literary work. It makes you laugh, maybe blush a bit, and for millions, that's the whole point.
That totally explains the massive appeal, the sales figures. But you mentioned earlier the author tried to layer in some heavier themes beyond just, who gets the rink. If they built this great escapist structure, what kind of emotional depth did they try to add?
Yeah, Hannah Grace was pretty ambitious there. She wasn't just aiming for a cute spots romance. The book really attempts to weave in some complex issues, things that give the characters more grounding. We're talking about dealing with toxic or even abusive relationships, especially in Anastasia's past. There are significant mental health struggles, mentioned anxiety, for instance,
Yeah.
body image issues too, tied to being a high-level athlete, and themes of self-worth, even therapy comes up.
Wow, that's quite a list. It sounds like she's trying to connect with modern readers who want that escapism, sure, but also want to see real, sometimes messy life reflected in the characters. Does that ambition actually land?
Well, in terms of trying to add depth, yes, I think
Yeah.
so. These themes are definitely used to drive character motivations and raise the stakes. Nate isn't just the charming captain. He becomes this really strong, safe, emotional support, partly because of the heavy stuff both he and Anastasia are dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And that attempt to add layers is actually one reason the book gets praised by readers who really value seeing mental health representation in their romance novels.
And speaking of representation, the supporting cast seems to be another big plus for readers. It adds texture to that whole university world, right?
Absolutely. The sources really highlighted that. The big group of friends, the other skaters, the hockey guys, they were highly valued. They're not just, background noise.
Right, not just props.
Exactly. The reviews specifically praised the diversity within that group, different family situations, backgrounds, even representation of disabilities. It helps build this really vibrant world around Anastasia and Nate. It gives the novel those crucial hangout vibes that romance readers often love, that feeling like you're just immersed in this fun group of friends.
Okay, so it sounds like Hannah Grace laid a really fantastic foundation. You've got great chemistry, lots of steam, a fun supporting cast, and this commitment to tackling some pretty serious themes. But you mentioned it was a heavy lift earlier. Where did that structure start to, well, buckle a bit under all that ambition?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, buckle.
Hmm.
The number one criticism, honestly, cited by almost every reviewer who rated the book under, say, 4 stars, is pacing and length.
Ah.
When you try to layer all those serious issues in that huge supporting cast onto a romance framework, you really need tight editing and icebreaker. Well, the consensus is it lacked that.
The sources mentioned something like a 100-page cut being possible. Did they specify what parts felt like filler?
They did. Most of the complaints focus on the middle section. The pacing apparently just drags significantly.
Why is that?
Repetitive internal thoughts, mostly from Anastasia. Reviewers felt that once the main relationship conflict was kind of resolved, the author maybe padded things out. Lots of unnecessary scenes, sometimes just focusing on those hangout vibes again, or descriptions of practice that felt repetitive scenes that didn't really move the plot or the character arcs forward.
Hmm.
It kind of suggests the author might have, fallen a bit too in love with their supporting characters, letting their side stories or comments slow things down.
So the plot gets a bit thin in the middle. Besides just dragging, were there problems with the main conflict structure itself?
Yes, that came up too.
Yeah.
The main conflict often felt a bit underwhelming to some. Apart from the initial rivalry over the rink, the big dramatic turns, especially around Anastasia's past or her skating future, were sometimes seen as less believable. Sources noted that those secondary threads, the important issues like mental health or toxic relationships that were meant to add depth, sometimes they felt underdeveloped. Were not set up very well.
So they felt tacked on.
Kind of, like they served more as convenient plot devices to create drama, rather than being fully explored parts of the characters' journeys.
That's a really key difference, isn't it? Using a serious issue for drama versus really exploring it. Okay, let's talk about the main characters, Anastasia and Nate. Because even great chemistry can't always save characters if they start feeling inconsistent. What were the issues there?
Anastasia definitely got the most criticism. She often comes across as frustrating, mainly due to inconsistency. Reviewers pointed out that her bossy or really demanding moments, especially about her training, sometimes seemed to clash with her stated severe anxiety issues.
I see.
It made her motivations feel a bit confusing or maybe immature at times, which, for some readers, made her a harder protagonist to really connect with all the way through.
And Nate, the perfect golden boy captain, did he maybe suffer from being too perfect?
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah.
He often swings too far the other way. He's seen as, well, overly idealized, almost too good to be true.
Like no real flaws.
Pretty much. Supportive to a fault, without any significant flaws or genuine internal struggles that make him feel truly dynamic. This can make their relationship feel a little unbalanced.
How so?
Like Anastasia is the source of all the relationship drama and tension, and Nate is just the steady, perfect, safe harbor, which isn't always the most compelling dynamic.
Right, it needs give and take. It sounds like there's maybe an overall issue with polish then, extending even to the basic world building. For a sports romance, how realistic were the sports elements?
According to the sources, not very realistic. And that was a pretty significant drawback for some.
Really? In what way?
Well, for a book that leans so heavily on the characters' intense drive as athletes, reviewers noted a lack of realism in the sports details. Things like the logistics of sharing the rink or how casually her competitive figure skating training was sometimes portrayed. Yeah, one reviewer specifically mentioned that Anastasia, who's supposedly aiming for the Olympics, seems to be constantly skipping crucial practice sessions or swapping them out for relationship drama. That stretched credibility for people who know anything about elite sports.
Yeah, that lack of basic sports realism would make it harder to buy into her supposed ambition. Okay, so when you put it all together, the great chemistry and high heat battling against the structural issues, the underdeveloped themes, what's the final verdict?
Well, this brings us back to that key issue, expectations versus marketing. Reviewers felt there was often a mismatch.
A mismatch how?
The marketing, the cover maybe, often positions the book as this cute enemies to lovers story set in college. Fun, right?
Sure.
But the book actually delivers extremely steamy content and these surprisingly heavy, mature themes we talked about. So if a reader goes in expecting something light and fluffy, they might be a bit thrown or even shocked by the tone shift and the weight of some of the issues.
That's a really interesting disconnect. So summarize the final rating, the recommendation for us. Where does Icebreaker ultimately land?
Consistently, the assessments put it around a 3 to 3.5 out of 5. Look, it's undeniably fun. And crucially, it delivers exactly that subgenre experience. The heat, the banter, the forced proximity that millions of readers are actively looking for. But it doesn't quite transcend the category. It's not generally seen as a masterpiece because it does get weighed down by those pacing issues, some cliches, and the uneven character execution. So what that score means for someone thinking about reading it is you're likely buying reliable entertainment, but maybe not a perfectly polished, flawless novel.
Okay, so that helps manage expectations. What does this all mean for the reader trying to decide who is this book really for?
It's definitely best for readers who prioritize spicy romance and emotional themes over, say, perfect plot construction. If you enjoy contemporary college or sports settings, and you like it when novels tackle things like mental health and self-esteem, this is probably a good fit. And crucially, it's ideal if you prefer those hangout vibes, just enjoying being immersed in the characters' lives more than you need a super tight, high-stakes plot with zero filler.
Makes sense. And conversely, who should maybe give this one a miss?
It's probably less ideal for readers who need deep realism in their sports fiction, or those who prefer really subtle, slow-burn romance.
Okay.
Also, if you demand tightly plotted stories with absolutely minimal filler, or if you're looking for ultra-deep character studies where the protagonists are always perfectly consistent, this book might feel a bit bloated, maybe flawed, and possibly frustrating at times.
That really clarifies the book's split personality, let's call it. So our final takeaway advice seems pretty straightforward. Icebreaker is absolutely worth checking out if you're specifically in the mood for that romantic, steamy college sports entertainment vibe. You know, if you want that satisfying hit of the enemies to lovers trope. But maybe just adjust your expectations regarding the plot's realism and the overall structural polish. Go in for the vibes and the heat, and you'll likely have a good time.
And if we zoom out for a second, connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer number of popular romance novels that kind of sit in this exact spot, that guilty pleasure, entertaining but flawed, 3 to 3.5 star category, it's really telling, isn't it?
Yeah, what does it tell us?
Well, it raises an interesting question. What does the huge success of Icebreaker specifically tell us about the current state of college and sports romance? It strongly suggests that for a large chunk of the readership, delivering guaranteed emotional catharsis and hitting those specific beloved tropes matters far more than crafting a truly original, tightly constructed plot. So how much does a truly original plot matter when the reader's main goal is hangout vibes and plenty of steam? And how does that preference shape what gets published and becomes popular in romance? Something for you to think about next time you're browsing for your next read.